We get to the CBA news, and that there's going to be, as early as Friday, we're recording this on Thursday, a new CBA that would kick in next September and would go through for 4 years. And it would have an 84-game regular season with only 4 preseason games, and players who have played 100 NHL games can play in a maximum of 2 preseason games. Player contracts, hey, they're listening. I've talked about this for a long time. Maximum of 7 years now for players, and with a team, and then 6 years. So right now it's 8 to retain a guy, and now it's going to go to 7 or 6 if he signs in the free agent market. Big one, I think, for a lot of people, a comprehensive playoff salary cap mechanism, effectively closing the LTR loophole, similar to what the Florida Panthers used again this year with Tkachuk able, they even said it publicly. Hey, that's how we were able to get Seth Jones and Marchand. So I'm curious on how it's going to work, Frank. That to me is a very important one. Draft picks now across the board for 4 years. They will own the rights of a player instead of 2 years to go back in the draft. There are also no more deferred salaries. That wasn't around very long, but it's not going to last very long. Revenue split stays 50-50. The playoff bonus pool fund is going to double from previous amounts. Something you've talked about a lot, Frank. The emergency backup goalie, the e-bug position, is going to be established full-time in an organization. So, no more beer league guys or amateur players that are going to dress for a game and potentially get in. And then there's a landmark player benefit improvements, as well as you can't mandate player dress code. And we already know what the upper limit of the salary cap, 95.5 this coming season, 104, and then 113. So obviously we've talked about this for a while, Frank. It seems like both sides were on par with one another. They're going to announce this early, a full 15 months before it kicks in. Anything really stand out for you in this deal?
Yeah, I don't think you can possibly overstate how enormous getting this done is for the NHL, its continuity, its business operations, and for the game itself. You mentioned how far out we are right now from the CBA expiring. Like, this is unprecedented labor peace that we've got now until 2030. So it's a huge step forward because, previously all I've kind of ever known covering this league has been goes down to the wire in September, and then all of a sudden I'm standing out on a street corner in New York looking for a cell phone charger because I'm camping out covering an NHL lockout. And so really glad to not have to do that from a pure selfish perspective because it's all about me. But in all seriousness, I think what's really interesting about this deal is that how cleanly it came together. It honestly didn't take very long. They didn't really start in earnest until late March, early April. And I think there was a real small window of time where they kind of went back and forth and everyone threw what they wanted to accomplish on the table. And I think both sides were able to kind of very quickly cross off the things that were non-starters for them. And they were able to then get to work on the things that actually could be changed. And they took what was not a perfect CBA, but in the NHL's mind, made it tighter and cleaner. And from the players' mind, they didn't gain any real significant additional revenue, but with the cap continuing to increase, with 2 more teams likely to eventually enter the fold and more jobs, the players don't really have a big stomach for, digging in and saying, hey, you really got us on the last couple CBAs. It's our turn to win some back. It's not really how it's going to work. And it's definitely not how it's going to work under Gary Bettman's watch. So I think just hammering this out and getting it done is hugely important for the overall success of the game, to have that not be talked about.
I would think there's a good chance this might be the last CBA that Bettman negotiates when you consider, it's another 5 years until it expires. We'll see.
I would say to that, by the way, yes. But if you think that he's going anywhere, my assumption would be
no, I think it's going to be his choice.
Well, no, I think at some point, yes, he's going to make a decision to step back, but I don't know if it's possible for him to quit it. So what I would project is him having some kind of commissioner emeritus status where he's aiding and assisting whoever the next commissioner is, and particularly when it comes to hammering out the next CBA, that he will still have some tentacles on it.
Yeah, potentially. I look at it. The only thing I'm like, there's lots I like. I like shortening the preseason. If you're going to go an extra 2 regular season, I always chuckle. They're like, well, this is the way we could make it even for every division. I always laughed. I'm like, you just could have taken 2 games less against the other team in your conference, and then you'd still play 4 games in your own division. It was so easy. But anyway,
I think it probably has something to do with expansion though, too, and the numbers that are involved with that.
Yeah, but even then with expansion, once you expand, Frank, that even stuff that's going to last for 2 years, right? That's why
I'm not good enough at math to understand what the matrix would look like.
No, it's not going to work at all evenly. You're not going to be able to play everybody an even number of games once you add in one more team to each one. It's just not going to work. But so I don't mind that. The playoff mechanism, we've talked about it. It's a clear advantage. There's no question. You can say it's luck. There's luck involved. Matthew Tkachuk's injury, no one really talked about it with Florida because, they had such a good playoff, but they had a really good playoff because, again, they had a salary cap that was over. Now, it's all within the rules, but it's a rule that 3 of the last 5 years, you had teams winning the cup that had a clear increased salary cap over their opposition. And that's, I think, when the fine lines are that close, that can be a big difference. So I like that that's closed.
I don't think that that's going to change all that much, though. Like, Matthew Tkachuk had a real injury. And
yeah, but if you have a salary, it's going to mean, though.
It's not going to work just like that. It's not going to be as simple as icing a lineup because you have to still allow that. Like, let's say let's play. So I had this conversation as I'm working through this with sources, and I was real hesitant to put any of the details in about what that playoff cap could look like and how they're going to close this loophole effectively, because let's just take it from a different perspective. And let's say the Panthers are a fringe playoff team and they really want to make it. Okay. If Matthew Tkachuk tears his adductor off the bone at 4 Nations, why should they not be allowed to go out and replace him to try and first make the playoffs? And then, so once they traded for this next replacement, why shouldn't they be able to use him in the playoffs?
Well, because then your salary cap is too high.
Okay. Well, I think there's going to be some kind of avenue that it's not wiggle room, but there's going to be some kind of cap. That's why I said in the description, a nod to acquisitions and how the cap functions, because what are you going to do? Tell that team and that player that they have to sit those guys out now?
Well, you have to be cap compliant, just like you have to be cap compliant in the regular season. That's all.
That's not the way it's going to work.
So what's it going to do then?
That's what I'm telling you. It's not simple and it's not cut and dry.
Okay. So, but it's going to eliminate something. Otherwise, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah, I agree. It will. Yeah. But I think the Panthers are a really poor example. Well, why also because Matthew Tkachuk could have been activated before the playoffs because of the Aaron Ekblad PED suspension, but he wasn't healthy enough to play.
Yeah, I don't discount that. All I'm saying is, if you have a roster that just says, "Hey, you can keep all your guys, but you might have to pick and choose who plays which game." That's all. Right? They're still on your team, right? To me,
it's going to be interesting to see. This is like some of these details that I'm fascinated to see because I was told very clearly in LA, it's not as simple as you think, and there's a lot that goes into it.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's that cut and dry, but all I know is if they're taking a step forward, they clearly recognize that it's been somewhat of an issue. I don't think anyone can argue it's a benefit if you're able to ice a roster with significantly more cap hit than your opposition. We saw it for years, in the non-salary cap eras. The teams who spent more usually had more success.
Yeah.
It's just
it's not a secret.
Yeah, you get better players. So the only one I was a little surprised is that the players have Now, I guess you're getting a playoff pool addition, which is nice, but that there was nothing about the expansion, and we know it's coming, and that's where the owners make huge money, right? That there was no part of that. That was the only thing I thought maybe the NHLPA might push for.
They did. I was told they made 2 attempts to get a share of the expansion fee money, and they were told pretty quickly that it was a non-starter.
Okay. Well, it'll be good. The thing I'm most excited about is shorter preseason. 8 preseason games was like, kill me now. It was awful. So it'll get quicker, and we walk and roll.
And you know what? We've seen with lockouts and COVID that we don't need long training camps for NHL players.
No, they all train. They're they come to camp in great shape. This is not 30 years ago when guys used training camp for a month to get in shape. They come to camp in shape. And I know some people will say, well, it's going to be harder for players to showcase their ability to make the team. And I'm like, I disagree with that, because players who played well in the first 3 preseason games, when it was mainly junior players and AHL players, guess what? Then they played 2 games against a mainly NHL roster, and they didn't look good. So it's like, all right, we're like, what are we doing here? And the truth of the matter is, Frank, there's only 3 or 4 guys who have a chance every year, maybe. And some years it's like 1 or 2 on a team to make the team. That's just a harsh fact.
Yeah. I can tell you, having covered many training camps, that I don't know that I've ever seen a team get it wrong, that they picked the wrong guy. Maybe there was a guy that they said, hey, we got salary cap limitations or contractual reasons. We're sending him to the minors to start the year and we're bringing him up. But it's not one of those things where routinely guys are getting cut or snubbed from a roster. If you're good enough, you're going to play.
That's totally agree with you. Yeah. So that's why shorter games, better. Everybody gets up to speed. The vets can only play 2 games, which they like. I'm sure there's still the minimum you got to address in those games, and away you go. So that will come in. We should remind everyone, not this season, but now do you know, Frank, because they're going to announce it Friday, I wonder if they'll put in the 4 years for the draft, owning it starting this year.
That's going to start now. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
There are some elements, and I wasn't totally clear yet which ones are going to be enacted immediately and the other ones are going to kick in. Like, I think the contract term limits and stuff, because July 1 is right around the corner. That's not going to be instantaneous, for instance. But there are some things that they were talking about that they were going to put in place right away.
Yeah, well, the draft is the one that makes the most sense. Why not put it in? It's, there's talk we might not even have 1 drafted player play in the NHL next year, which not necessarily a bad thing in my books. So we'll see.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.